Hello and welcome back to Salmon's Pizzeria, your slice of Scottish football. If you're watching the pod, you can already see our special guest. If you're only listening, we'll have to introduce you to him as it's a Halloween edition in a way, although he's the only one dressed up. So I am Stu. I am your host for this evening, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Alex and Ethan, or maybe not Ethan. So I'll go to him first. David Martindale. How are you doing?
Yeah, like, all right, Stu, I appreciate you asking, pal.
and uh, and Alex, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm better or worse after that, but yeah, I'm good. I'm enjoying my week so far.
I was gonna. I'm obviously Ethan's got the bold cap for Martindale. I am bold, so I could have Aloha shirt behind me. I could have done the Connor Salmon, but as pointed out before this started, I wouldn't fit in that Aloha shirt. And Alex stole my other one, so we can't.
I won it. I won it in the Pizzeria Charity 5 tournament raffle. So
It was a bit of a fix, though, wasn't it? I should have just left it at home, and then I could have kept it forevermore. But before we start, we're going to try something a little bit different. We're going to give you a little teaser at the start. Well, teaser question, a little quiz question to see if you know the answer, and the boys will try and answer it at the very end. So they've got all pod to think about it. You can have a guess, obviously. It's pretty easy, but there has only ever been one Brazilian manager in Scottish football. I'm not going to ask you to give me his name because it's a very niche bit of knowledge, but can you name me the club he managed? And I'll give you one last clue to have a wild guess. It's a club currently in the Scottish Premiership. So, one Brazilian manager in the history of Scottish football. He's managed a team currently in the Scottish Premiership. So, have a think on that, and then we'll reveal it at the very end of the podcast, and you can see how you did. So, on to the pod. We haven't had one for a couple of weeks. Of course, we've got plenty to get through. Plenty has happened in the short term. Rangers have obviously managed back-to-back wins. They've managed their first away clean sheet since I think maybe we started this podcast. Celtic also going through their own troubles. Brendan Rodgers sensationally resigning last week as manager. Martin O'Neill and Sean Maloney coming into play. So I think we're going to start at Celtic, Ethan. Brendan Rodgers obviously has been very vocal about his feelings towards the board and maybe not being backed enough in recent times. They've struggled this season. Obviously, I think it's more in the open because Hearts have started so well, and up until obviously last night, they were 8 points clear. How did you did you think it was a shock? Did you see this coming? Did you think it was going to come to blows, or did you think Rodgers was going to see out the season regardless?
I personally thought he was going to see out the season, especially given the fact that we kind of had this scenario before where he kind of left mid-season, and there's no doubt in my mind that when he came back, he was going to kind of look to kind of rewrite the wrongs. He'd be accepted, he'd be welcomed pretty much immediately from the Celtic fans, despite all the initial shouts calling him a rat and whatnot. But I thought, because he'd left before and there was such a big deal made about it the first time, I didn't expect him to do it again. I thought he would see out the season, win the league, and then move on, almost as a state of protest against the Celtic board, who he seems to kind of, as you say, coming to blows with. I mean, the statement the club issued is mental, really. Like the way I've interpreted reading it, it starts off professional, and by the end of it, it's effectively called Brendan Rodgers a selfish liar. So that's quite a damning statement. And also saying that he was on board with every single signing, and I think maybe Rodgers was making implications that he wasn't completely on board in some of his press conferences. I don't know the full story, to be entirely honest, but I know he had been kind of complaining, and obviously, it's easier to see in hindsight. But really, the whole comment about referring to his own players after the Dundee defeat as or Dundee defeat would be the Honda Civic comments. You're comparing his players to Honda Civics, which it is a mental statement. But without getting too much into it, I just thought like, well, how would your own players kind of feel hearing that? That's not going to rile them up. That's probably just going to knock them down, really. And that's the last thing they need when they're in a position where they're trailing, they're chasing first place. Obviously, Hart's been doing magnificently well, but yeah, I mean, I've got some thoughts as well. Further thoughts on just the kind of the whole outlook from the Celtic fans. I'll go into that later on. Just for the sake of answering the question, yeah, I'm surprised, and now I'm confused as to who comes in next. Obviously, the shouts for Ange Postecoglou. That seems to be the fans' favourite, but whether he comes back or not, does he see Celtic as a opportunity to repair a stock? Does he maybe still have some credit in the bank given the circumstances of what happened at Nottingham Forest? Because after all, he was a Europa League winner as recent as May. I don't know. But what I would say is if they don't get Ange Postecoglou, I can't see them getting someone better than Brendan Rodgers, a Premier League caliber of manager. It might be one of those cases where the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah, for sure. I think currently, I think Kieran McKenna's sort of shot up the list, isn't he, of one of the favourites, and I think he was asked about it today, and he didn't necessarily say no. So we'll see how that one sort of unravels. Alex, just on some of the points Aoife made there, the statement itself, basically calling Brendan Rodgers a lie, I think is it was crazy. It's something we'd maybe expect to see out of Rangers. Just that sort of, you don't associate the mentalness with Celtic so much in recent years, and it's usually Rangers that have just got everything going on, and suddenly Rangers are almost building back to a good place, and now Celtic have got to take over the mantle for a little bit. It's weird how it switches. But just sort of further on that, I mean, Brendan Rodgers insinuating that he doesn't have full say on the players. Do you think it's probably fair in a way that, like, I don't think Brendan Rodgers is looking in the Japanese market for players. It seems something that Celtic maybe picked up from a time with Postecoglou and were keen to carry on exploring it. And it's nothing new at football clubs. Football clubs have sporting directors and they have people in charge of transfers that go out. Then they maybe sit down with the manager and go through it then. Do you think it's one way or the other with what Brendan Rodgers has been saying to what the board has been saying, or do you think it's somewhere in the middle between there's problems on both sides?
I think both of them could be telling the absolute whole truth, but they're telling the part that they want to tell. Because in press conferences, you never ever heard Brendan Rodgers say, "I didn't want to sign Balak Wisha" or "I didn't want to sign Tonekti," but he said he wanted to sign more players. Likewise, the board aren't saying that. Um, they're not saying that, oh, we signed everyone Brendan wanted. We're just saying that the players we did sign, we had his approval over. The players that we did sell, we had his approval over. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think the board have tried to be, or Dermot Desmond's tried to be smart with it in terms of saying, we thought we were on his good side kind of thing, and he's selling us out to the media. Whereas on the other side of things, Brendan Rodgers is probably just doing what most managers do in terms of pushing, and I think the media is a great way and a way that we see multiple managers do it. It's hard. It's hard to say. I think obviously the fans would take Brendan's side on the two. If it was a scale of 50-50, the more are going to go to Brendan's side than the board side, because ultimately he wasn't back to the level that Celtic are capable of backing him. That being said, he was still backed. He did have a strong enough team that should have been able to beat Kairat Almaty in the Champions League qualifiers. He did have a stronger team than Dundee, a stronger team than Hearts, with bigger resources. He should be able to win these games. I think Scott Allen said on last night's show is, I think you can complain about these things up until September 1st. Then September 2nd onwards, the window's shut. There's nothing the board can do. There's nothing you can do. You've got that team. You've got to look at it and make it work. And he ultimately couldn't. So I think he's probably quite a selfish person, Brendan Rodgers. I think you've always seen that from him. And unfortunately, I think I was starting to liken Russell Martin to a sort of little version of Brendan Rodgers at the start of the season with certain comments. But now, yeah, I think Brendan Rodgers was just doing a bit of defending himself, and he's left, and this time he won't get as much of the blame as last time. But the board have really, really stuck out with that statement, and there's no winners in war, and they're already losing the war with their fans. So I have no idea why they've done that.
Well, I've got some notes here. Could I just float something out and just see what you guys think? Because obviously, I've Celtic fans, they're acting like they're in crisis, and I've been getting my licks in online. And the most common comment I get, just as you're on about Alex, you say about how he's maybe not been backed. I've got something that can maybe challenge that. So, like I say, I'll put it out there, see what your thoughts are. The main reply I was getting, and some of us were having a lot of fun with, was that it's called having standards. And now I can make sense of that to the degree that, considering the capabilities of Celtic, they're not really at their full potential. They're not the best they can be. I think they're right in saying that. Because if you made a starting 11 of the best players they've had the past 10 years, it's probably a side that could probably do pretty decent in competing in Europe when you consider the likes of Jeremy Frimpong, Virgil van Dijk, Fraser Foster, Matt O'Reilly, Chris Ayer, Moussa Dembele. A lot of big household names there that have mainly sold for millions, that have played at top levels. Now, obviously, for Celtic, maybe maintaining those kinds of players isn't, they've not done it, and they've not done it for a reason. Maybe there is a realistic feeling that that once these players have established themselves at Celtic, they want to move on, higher levels, higher money. But it gives you an idea of the pool that Celtic can work with. That they should always be looking to, the next transfer window, right? Can they unearth the next Virgil van Dijk, the next Jeremy Frimpong? Players that can come to Celtic as and use that platform to pedestal into the top 5 European leagues. But when I look into it, it's like, they've got millions in the bank and they could be spending money on better players like that. But my question is, where was that attitude previously? When I look at Celtic in my living memory, I can remember that January window when they signed Nadir Chifchi, Gary Mackay-Steven and Stuart Armstrong to weaken Dundee United at a point when Dundee United were looking to compete against them. They were bound to face them in the League Cup final. Then there's the point I'm getting is, were those signings to enrich Celtic, to make them a better side for Europe? Where were the standards back then in a case like that? And in the case of when they're picking off Yusuf Malumbu from Kilmarnock, or Luke McCowan from Dundee, or Johnny Hayes from Aberdeen, or when they're prowling over assets of other teams in the league, like they've tried to lowball offers for John McGinn, lowball offers for Lennon Miller. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. I mean, they hoover up the best of the rest. So where were these so-called standards from the fan base at that point? I think that's a fair question to ask. I mean, consider the fact Scott Allen, who you just mentioned as well, Alex, when he arrived at Celtic as a championship playmaker, he got like a standing ovation. He got to walk out to the crowd and everything. Like he was given a hero's welcome. Now that wasn't necessarily a coup for Celtic. That was kind of deemed to be a signing that was maybe not necessarily to get in the way of Rangers. Maybe it was. I don't know, but I think you can see the point I'm getting to here. If that was the stand, we want to have the best possible players available, then why were they so content with hoovering up the best of the rest for all the years prior? Because after all, last season when they got into the Champions League knockout stages, that was the first time there in 12 years. So it's not as if that's the norm for Celtic. That's actually an accomplishment in my eyes. That's the way I see it. So just want to float that thought out there, and see what you guys think about that. Because
I'll just jump on that then. It's hard to kind of come to the defense of Celtic fans because I think it is fair to say they are spoiled, right? But that is the way that Scottish football is, and that's what, like, as you talk about standards, that is where they've come to kind of sit. And in terms of that, you can't really take that away from them because it's just what has happened, whether it be through their own success or the lack of a challenger. We're no stranger to that at Rangers. We really have messed up over the last 20 years, and it's so Celtic really, those fans have grown up with continual dominance, and for them that is just what they expect. So standards wise, I understand that it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way in Scotland at the moment. Just to kind of go on the back of that, I completely agree. And I still think that for both Rangers and Celtic, the domestic market is completely underused. Players like Josh Mulligan are people who Rangers should have been all over. I mean, Connor Barron, not his biggest fan, but he put in a really good performance against Hibs last night, and we get him from Aberdeen. Lyle Cameron's another one who showed glimpses. Obviously, as you said, Luke McCowan to Celtic, Gary Mackay-Steven, Stuart Armstrong when they went there, Ryan Christie when he went there as well.
Yeah.
It is underused. But ultimately, the board have put themselves in this situation by panic buying last season. I don't care what anybody says, but spending $9 million on Adam Ida was a huge mistake for multiple reasons. One, he's not worth $9 million. I mean, I can't believe they've even managed to recoup $5 million of that to Swansea. I'm not sure what Swansea saw in him, but they've managed to get rid of him. If if I'm defending the board in a way, maybe they don't want to spend as much money on big players because that was one that Brendan Rodgers sanctioned so high, and then they have taken a £4 million loss on that. They've also bought Engels last year. So then that comes with the expectation that they spent 20 plus million on 2 players in one window last season. This season, their fans will then expect more because that's what it is. If you stand still, it's a step backwards in football. So their fans will expect more of that. And the board have almost put out an instant target for themselves by going, well, we spent 20 million last year, because now Celtic fans are expecting 21 million to be spent. And when there's players like, I can't remember who it was, but there was a certain name floating about, and it would have cost Celtic 12 to 14 million pounds. And then Casper Dolberg would have cost them 10 million pounds as well. Excuse me. And realistically, 2 years ago, these players are not even an eye shot. As soon as you hear that price tag, Celtic fans would go, oh, I don't want the board to spend that because that's far too much to spend on a player. But now, because of last window, where they spent 11 million on Arne Engels, when they spent 9 million on Adam Ida and other signings as well, they're going, well, why aren't we spending 12 million on Casper Dolberg? Why aren't we spending all this money on a right winger to replace Nicholas Kuhn, or to look for the next Virgil van Dijk or the next Jeremy Frimpong? Why are we not spending more money? I agree, though, to go back to your point, that not only did they pick up cheap players like Nadir Chifchi or Stuart Armstrong or whoever it may be, they also picked up cheap players in Kyogo Furuhashi, in Dyson Maeda, in Alistair Johnson, in Cameron Carter-Vickers. I mean, I know they spent about 6 million on him, but still, that's not a huge outlay for a player who has been so important for them. If they went and spent 1 or 2 million on a player now, a project player like, say, Kyogo was, who comes in, is then firing, and they sell for 8 times what they bought him for, the fans aren't that happy at the moment if 1 or 2 million is spent on a player. Look at Shin Yamada, who is going to take a bit of time to get firing, and the fans don't want to see that. Some of them want to see him fail so they can go, I told you so. And I've become so used to that with Rangers fans, one particularly on Twitter, who I will not mention, but I mentioned plenty of time in the chat. People want to see these players fail so they can go, look at how bad our recruitment was, look at how bad everything went. And that is where the Celtic fans sit at this very moment. So overall, I would back your point, but I do think the board have put a target on their own back.
Can I just say as well, I think some of it as well is progression. So Celtic fans, I think we do it as Rangers fans because of our success in Europe, but our runs in Europe. You look at like the likes of Club Bruges, even down to like sort of Braga going deep into tournaments a lot, or always being around these. I think Celtic look at these teams around Europe that aren't in the top 3 or 4 leagues and think, well, why can't we be them? Why can't we go and play the big teams off the pitch in Europe? Because Celtic have underachieved in Europe, haven't they? For the players they've had, the players they've sold to big leagues and for big money, they've underachieved in Europe with those players. And I think their fans probably want to know why they can't go to the latter stages in whether it's Champions League or Europa League, because they could realistically, with the players they've had better teams than Rangers, and Rangers have done far better in Europe. So I don't think it's tough. Standards is not the right word for it, but I think they can have an expectation that the club wants to progress. Revenues are higher than they've ever been. The club are banking cash left, right, and centre. I'm not saying they need to go spend 10, 15 million per player, but there's no reason they can't be spending 5, 6 million multiple times to bring in players, and they can still upsell those players. They can still move them on for big money after. Whether the Celtic board have got into that mode of realizing that we do have a ceiling in Scotland of maybe what players can be sold for, and then trying to maybe, you see, like Alex said, Engels and Ida. I mean, I said this with Chimiti. When you buy a player for that much, even if he's a star, how much are you realistically going to make on him? Like, Rangers would have to make it a record sale to really justify it. If he turned out to be a superstar and you sold him for 15 million, at the end of the day, you've banked after add-ons probably 5 million. That's a huge risk to take to try and to sell a player on for a 5 million profit. And it's the same with Engels. They come with targets on their back. They can't produce the football that and even when they do, people expect Engels to come up there and be the best player on the pitch every single game because he costs £11 million. And if he has one misplaced pass or he does something that's not quite right, it's I can't believe. And it's other fans, obviously, that from other clubs that want to wind up Celtic fans for the money they've spent, and we see it with every club that spend money on a player that doesn't quite reach the level you're expecting. And I think the board realised that they're probably not going to make a profit on Arne Engels unless there's a drastic 180 on his form. They didn't make a profit; they made a loss on Eder. So I think the Celtic fans, again, I think standards, he used the wrong word. There are standards, of course there's standards, but I don't think they're in the wrong for expecting or wanting their club to progress and get bigger and better when you see other clubs that aren't the same size as them doing better each year in Europe.
Well, there you go then. It's kind of like how much can they spend realistically? If it's all about how much they can make in return. I hear a lot of stuff about like, oh, they've got £80 million in the bank, but does that necessarily mean they've got £80 million that they can just spend willy-nilly? Are they not going to be investing heavy amounts of money in other aspects of the club, not just necessarily the first team? But if we look into the first team, we know Brendan Rodgers is the highest paid manager in the club's history. Like I said, Premier League caliber manager. We know Kasper Schmeichel will not be cheap. That's a Premier League caliber goalkeeper, Danish internationalist. Kelechi Iheanacho as well won't be on cheap wages. And big signing of the summer, Kieran Tierney arriving from Arsenal. Okay, maybe it's feasible he would take a pretty big wage cut from it was on Arsenal to return to Celtic, but that still won't be cheap. So there's still going to be significant investment on the other side of things. A lot of fans in there are maybe disillusioned by, but we didn't spend $6 million on him, or we didn't spend a couple million on him. But overall, I think they'll still be spending significant money on just the wages of this kind of group alone. And there's other players in across the squad that have got investment. I've noted down the likes of, we talked about Shin Yamada earlier. There's that Balak Wisha, Janetki, Benjamin Nygren, Austin Trusty, Paulo Bernardo. These are all multi-million pound signings.
It's a strange one because you think back to the quote that comes into my head just when you're saying that, because you're sitting there and it makes me think of Otamendi, Aguero, Mourinho sitting there when he was a Manchester United manager saying these are not players from this season, these are investments from the past, and they've managed to make this team successfully better whilst they've also sold, for Celtic's case, the likes of Kyogo, the likes of Matt O'Reilly for a record fee. These players have left and then they've come in and let's be fair, for Football Manager players, Benjamin Nygren is a dream. You think, wow, he's a superstar, and for 1.3 million, you think they're picking up a bargain. He's not been there 6 months, and they're already, he's already got some slander names. Every single misplaced pass is horrific. I mean, I saw a tweet from a Celtic fan last night which said Nygren would be better if he was decapitated. It's just like they genuinely are in that place that a player does not have enough time to settle. And we know this at Rangers, we very much know this, but a player does not have enough time to settle before being good. The best example would be look at Nicholas Kuhn. His first season at Celtic was pretty poor, and they would have been lucky if they got the £2 or £3 million which they spent on him back. A season later, he's going for 25 odd million. And, these players need time to settle. So I think there's a bit of extra pressure on the board because it comes with the performance of the team at the moment, and that goes hand in hand. They got knocked out of the Champions League when they should have got through, and maybe signing Tonekti and Balakwish earlier in the window maybe would have helped them get through. At the same time, do they still have the players that should be taking them through to the group stage? Absolutely. So I think it's a bit of a blame game from both sides in terms of, if you're Brendan Rodgers, you're looking for an excuse. Why did we go out of the Champions League? Well, we haven't had enough investment. If you're the board, you're probably looking at him going, what the hell are you talking about? Because you shouldn't need investment to be a Kazakhstan team that's never been in the Champions League in their history.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just keen to move us on slightly because I'm conscious of the time. I wasn't spending 25 minutes of Celtic, and I still wanted to ask. We'll go back to Ethan. I still wanted to ask Martin O'Neill now in interim management. Some people think it's Sean Maloney doing everything, and Martin O'Neill's the figurehead. We don't know, but it started off pretty well. Celtic 4, Falkirk 0. Some questionable defending at times from Falkirk. Scott Bain, I've no idea what he's doing on that third goal when he pushes it back out. But Johnny Kenny, 2 goals, Ethan. It's, a perfect time for him to get some confidence. Do you think he might lead the line in the semi-final at the weekend?
Well, he's certainly got to be the favourite because, again, I think in football you've got to go with the momentum. You've got to go with the confidence players. Johnny Kenny, he's onto something good. Why throw a spanner in the works of that? I think he's going to have to be the one that leads the line. And yeah, maybe Sean Maloney is I think maybe between Sean Maloney and Mark Fotheringham, they're probably the guys taking the training. And you think what you'll find is O'Neill will still be picking the players. He's just maybe not got the energy to kind of do everything else. We've got to remember he's about like he's not 73 now. He's getting on quite a bit. He's older than what Arsene Wenger was when Wenger retired. You know, I saw someone say that earlier on Twitter to kind of put that into context. But yeah, it seemed all pretty routine. One thing I noticed, again, I didn't watch the game, I caught the highlights, but it seemed to me there was a bit more of a lease of life with Celtic, not just in terms of being direct, but off the ball as well. It was just like they had much more of a unity sense about them in terms of their shape. It looked like players were actually really putting the effort in to kind of get a jog on and keep their shape. And you know, we'll maybe talk about it later on, but I noted the same thing with Rangers as well with the Hibs game. It just kind of like, you know, those small little details where it's obviously the players have realised, right, we've got someone new to impress to keep my place in the team, and that I think alone just provides a player a lease of life. No longer they got someone in the dugout like comparing them to cars. Like now it's like, okay, here's someone that's blank slate, opportunity to impress. Let's take it from there. And Johnny Kenny, he's taking his chance. So yeah, I would favour him to be starting in the semi final against Rangers. And yeah, like I said, routine win. Scott Bain just, you know, he was top of the world on the weekend, so it's quite pleasing to see that. You know, no matter how far cream does rise to the top, cream always spoils in the end, doesn't it? So.
That's a great line. And yes, Martin O'Neill's 73, but still got the Martin O'Neill leap on him, hasn't he? Still finding that in him. Although I've got to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen a 70-year-old something man wear football boots before. So that was something different as well. Moving on then, Alex. Rangers, Danny Röhl in charge now. Back-to-back league wins, 3-1 over Killy, with a Jack Butland blunder in the middle of that. And then a 1-0 win over Hibs where Jack Butland saves the day. Probably something that he needed, maybe. I mean, I saw the stat from Scottish Coefficient last night. He saved 6 of his last 7 penalties faced, which is an outrageous stat. Because I'm almost certain we were told he had a poor penalty save ratio when he joined Rangers, leading up to a penalty shootout. Danilo 2-2. He's coming from the cold. Chimiti goal and assist. First away clean sheet in 26 odd games. What has Danny Röhl changed the Rangers to get this going again?
Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I think what Ethan said about Martin O'Neill and Celtic rings true for Rangers as well. Is a manager has favourites and not so favourites, as we saw, say for example with Brendan Rodgers and Johnny Kenny. That was his kind of his stubbornness. His strong point was that Johnny Kenny will never be good enough to lead the line. Ergo, he will never lead the line. It's probably the same at Rangers in terms of Russell Martin would have very quickly found his favourites. Danny Röhl has not had the opportunity to do that yet. So all the players are fighting for that. They're fighting for that opportunity. I thought Mikey Moore was really strong last night. I've been really critical of him at Rangers, but I thought he had a good first half. Anyways, a very strong first half and a couple of decent runs in the second half as well. I don't know. Danny Röhl's obviously changed the formation. He's changed the tactics, and that's something new. I don't want to get too carried away. I know fans are singing his name and everything, but realistically, if it wasn't for the horror start that we had under Russell Martin, the last 2 weeks are just normal. You know, that's just normal. Or last 2 games are just 2 normal results for Rangers. So it shouldn't be anything to get carried away about. It's simply because of how horrific we were before. So it gives us a little bit of a boost and a little bit more confidence ahead of the semi-final on Sunday. I still think, obviously, we go into that as the underdogs. But the fight is certainly there when it wasn't a couple of weeks ago. And even in Danny Röhl's first game, obviously, he hadn't enough time really to sort out that brand game in Europe. But there were plenty of issues with fight at the start of the season, and in the last couple of games, you've kind of seen a bit more resilience. There's still nervy bits, and there's going to be nervy bits for weeks to come, especially with that back line and anytime James Tavernier plays. But for me, it looks a bit stronger, and we did deserve the win last night. I don't think, other than the penalty and one good save from Jack Butland, Hibs didn't really threaten at all. Rangers dominated on the ball. We're still a bit toothless. We need to be better in front of goal. We need to create easier chances as well. We're doing the hard part right, and then the easy bit we're not quite getting. And it'll come, hopefully. And hopefully Sunday doesn't come too soon, and Röhl's able to get us into the final.
And just sort of staying with you then, Alex, on that semi-final, how do you think Röhl's going to... I mean, I don't need your full 11, but do you think he's going to stick with a 3 at the back? Do you think Tav comes back in for a start? And who do you think's going to start up front?
Yeah, I think last night rotation was probably for two reasons. Obviously, I think as he said, a new manager wants to see all of his players, and also with a busy schedule, there needs to be rotation. The good thing is that a lot of players last night I wouldn't expect to play on Sunday, and we were still able to get over the line. That being said, there are players like Max Aaron's last night who you would definitely have not had in your team for Sunday and now might have because he put in a decent shift, and then Tavernier came on and made it even better for Max Aaron's because he had a horrible shift. Um, I Yeah, we need Magoma not to get booked in the first half because we're so short at left back. Um, I think Chermiti and Danilo, you probably have to start with those two up top. Danny Röhl did mention that Danilo's got to build back up because he's not had those minutes, and it's maybe going to be, if he's in from the start against Celtic in such a high intensity, it's in an electric atmosphere and such an important game. It might be a bit too much, and we might only get 45 out of him. Is he maybe a better impact sub as we've seen before against Celtic at Hampden? And then you start with Bojan Miovski, who's better against teams when he can get space in behind, and that's what you might get against Celtic. So I don't know. Hopefully, I'm pleasantly surprised on Sunday, but I'm not counting my chickens. I'm not sure. I think it's too early because I know it's back-to-back wins, and that's more wins than we had in the league or under Russell Martin. But it should have been the norm, really. That should have been two games that we should have won any other season. So.
Yep, and Ethan, just on Hibs, then missed the chance to go a full calendar year in the league unbeaten at home. Seems to happen with him at Rangers. There's something about I can't remember the stat, but it's a very ridiculous stat at Easter Road with games against Rangers. It's sort of struggling to put it together at the moment. Hibs, a good win over Aberdeen away from home, 2-1. They sort of made it stuffy for Celtic and drew 0-0 at Celtic Park. In amongst that, losing late goals to Hearts, or a late goal to Hearts in the derby, and now this loss as well, and in a game that they've missed a penalty in. It's what do they need just to sort of get that run going again, or get something going? Because they're not in the worst position in the league or anything, but like I said, it's that sort of consistency just isn't there.
I've just realised I could probably change my name to David Gray on this, and I probably still wouldn't look at a place. Because I was about to say, if I'm David Gray, I don't really know exactly where to look on a tactical basis. But from the outside, my observation seems to be that they've kind of lost some of the wind in their sails. At the start of the season, there was very professional displays, whilst being combative in Europe. They had several players that felt like they were high flying, like Kieran Bowie earlier in the season was scoring every week, scoring some outstanding goals for that matter. Now it kind of seems like I wouldn't say it's dried up, but he seems to have quietened on that front a little bit. And with the penalty from McGrath, they score that. That's huge. How late was it exactly? Was it within the last 5 minutes of the game?
It's
Was it in the
87 minutes, 86 minutes.
Yeah, something along the lines of that.
That's a pretty decisive time to score. And obviously McGrath, he's got a bit of a knack for missing penalties against Rangers as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think he missed one or two whilst at Aberdeen. So it was, that big moment for Hibs kind of gone by. So I don't know why the wind's out of their sails so much. Could you say confidence is depth? I'm not too sure. It's obviously a difficult fixture as well, especially when a club like Rangers are in town with a new manager as well, because that tends to be, no matter how the managerial appointments work out in the end, there's always that kind of that initial winning patch at the very start that tends to come in the manager's bounce. So yeah, in regards to Hibs, it's tough to really pinpoint why exactly they're kind of slowing down, but at the same time they're not. It's not as if they're doing terrible at the same time. I think they're still maybe third in the league, if I'm not mistaken, or is it? I've not checked the table since
Fourth
round
now. I think Rangers have finally moved up to third.
Yeah, so it's not terrible, not awful, but yes, certainly they've got some of the stuffing knocked out of them. So David Gray's obviously just got to kind of recalculate and say, how do we? Cause we're getting to that time of year where the games come in really thick and thin. It's going to get a lot more stuff here coming November and in December time. So yeah, like I said, the ones to watch because they're a team that excited a lot of people last season. Hibs, very direct, and their summer signings were actually very encouraging as well. So I was actually expecting them to be kind kind of what Hearts are doing just now, to be honest. And my feeling was if they managed to get that Lyndon Dykes signing over the line, I think I said it in the group chat, they get Dykes. If it's Dykes and Bowie up front, I'm sticking them on to win the League Cup. And then, of course, they went to Ibrox and then I think they got knocked out, didn't they? So that's because they
Stop
didn't
it.
sign Lyndon Dykes.
Lyndon Dykes. Stop it. Just before you move on from Hibs, can I just say, last season they were sitting what at this stage of the season were they not in a relegation battle with Hearts?
Hearts, yeah, they were.
So if they can get the second half of the season that they managed to get last season, then they'll be flying. They'll be delighted. But yeah, it is just about trying to get that start of the season and continue that momentum. But I think it was a bit of a kicker when they did lose certain games at the start of the season, just on the basis of they had like the best form in the league for the past 6 months or something like that. You know, they had better form than Rangers and Celtic. They were going into the season in a really strong position, but I think there was just a bit of mental fatigue because you can only keep that up for so long. So you maybe expected a little bit of a drop off in performance. I think last night they weren't bad, they just weren't good, and they have won their previous 2 games. So there's plenty for David Gray to work with, and I do think that he'll still manage to get them into a decent position. But you're obviously being overshadowed by your City rivals, then nothing's good enough. So.
Yep, and speaking of City rivals, Alex, I'll stay with you, and as we move over to Hearts, top of the league, their gap is now 6 points after a 2-2 draw with St Mirren. Bit of a crazy game, that one. It's one of the games I did want to go into. First off, we've got we probably all saw the stats coming out from Kizaridis and the percentiles he's in, and just proving again how good the Jamestown sort of data model is. I nearly said Jonestown then, which is a completely different thing, so I won't touch too much there. But how good that is. The spots of like Claudio Braga, Kizaridis, who's doing fantastically well, absolutely tore Celtic apart in the 3-1 win last night. Listen, St Mirren is always a tough place to go. It doesn't matter if Livingston go there and win. It's still tough if Rangers, Celtic, Hearts, Hibs, anyone goes there. It's a tough game. I don't want to butcher his name, but Undululu, or however you say his name, Undulu. He was very highly rated at Southampton when he was there, and he's sort of coming on to. I mean, there's a fantastic finish last night, the little head touch and overhead kick into the top corner. Scored before that as well for St Mirren in the game with, it's eluding me now, Dundee United. He scored the consolation, didn't he? So plenty of good from St Mirren. But the point I really wanted to touch on, because we haven't got much time, I can't really go through loads of it. The decision to disallow the goal for 3-1, St Mirren 3, Hearts 1, it would have been. Alex, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? And the official decision was that Marco Hara blocked Lawrence Shanklin, and Mark O'Hara was in an offside position. Therefore, it was illegal for him to block Lawrence Shanklin. What are your thoughts, I guess, on the decision and I guess VAR looking at it in general?
Yeah, if you go to Lawrence Shanklin before, let's just say the referee goes over, he checks the screen, he comes away and he goes, right, Shanklin, there could have been a foul there. If you can tell me what it is, Shanklin wouldn't have been able to do so. His view was not impaired. There was nothing wrong with what happened, and St Mirren should have been 3-1 up. Obviously, that doesn't happen. Hearts go on to get what would any other season be a very, very good point, and I think it is still a good point. I think people will criticise it because that means that they're only 6 points clear instead of 8, which is still a ridiculous sentence to say. But it is a solid point. I mean, not that we were on the best of form, but Rangers have been there this season, and we're probably lucky to come away with a point. Celtic are yet to kind of go and see what that St Mirren side can do. They were lucky to take the 3 points against them on the opening day of the season. St Mirren were really solid there, so it's an interesting one, and St Mirren can build a bit of momentum now going into their semi-final. But yeah, it's an interesting one because that goal should never have been ruled out, and St Mirren should have been looking at the semi-final with even more momentum, with a 3 points and a very solid performance and result. But I don't see it. I don't see where they've got. Yeah, O'Hara has impaired, or he stopped Shanklin from getting to the ball, or he stopped him seeing it or whatever. Shanklin barely even notices that O'Hara's there himself.
Yeah, and same question to you, Ethan. I'll get your thoughts on it. I mean, can you even possibly play devil's advocate on this one? Is there a way that you can see how it's given?
No, it's the whole. I hate the whole saying "letter of the law" thing because for me, it's not real interference. It's like they'll pick and choose what they can deem to be interference. As Alex says, I don't think he really gets in the way of Shankland. Shankland doesn't really notice that he's there. I can remember a situation in a Manchester derby where someone was was it Rashford? He was in an offside position, but he doesn't touch the ball. He doesn't interfere with play. He's simply running with the ball, and the Man City players choose to do nothing about it. And so then, when the onside player, I think it was maybe Bruno Fernandes, then decides to get on the end of it, take the shot and score, they were saying, well, Marcus Rashford was in offside position, therefore he was interfering. I was like, well, no, you can't just be interfering for simply existing. Had any of those City players decided just to wipe him out then and there, they could have fouled him for then they would have been in the clear because he was offside, and then that way there's interference because there's been that interaction. Same with this case. There's not really. He's just existing. He's offside and he's existing. That's not a foul. That's not illegal. That should be fine. But like I say, they pick and choose at points what classifies as interference. I've got a bit of a problem as well when it comes to being offside and being in the keeper's line of sight. Sometimes it's valid, and sometimes it's like, well, no, the keeper can see completely fine. They've managed to cherry pick something as an excuse. So yeah, like I say, for me, St Mirren should have been 3-1 up, and I'm actually quite staggered as how they've actually managed to kind of find that fault to disallow it. I think it's actually quite impressive, to be honest. But yeah,
what's mental is that if it wasn't for a half a yard or even less, St Mirren could have lost that game at the end of the game because parts of a goal ruled out for offside. And realistically, they should be looking at a 3-1 win, and they've almost lost it right at the death. They would be absolutely devastated. So, I mean, Robinson was watching from the stands anyway, so at least he couldn't get an extra ban for his comments on telly. But he'll be seething, and and rightly so.
Yeah, absolutely. And just on your sort of Premier League comparison there, Ethan, I seem to remember one. I can't remember who they played. It was Liverpool a couple of seasons ago, and I think they dinked a ball into the box, and Salah was offside by quite a distance. The defender then jumped up and headed it and behind himself, and it lands at Salah's feet, and he scores. And they didn't deem that as interfering with play, even though the defenders headed it to stop Salah getting it. Or he's obviously hashed the header, but he's only gone for it because of Salah. So that therefore that would be interfering in my eyes, but it's weird how they do seem to pick and choose.
There's an FA Cup final where that happened as well. It was Arsenal versus Chelsea. Alexis Sanchez scored against Chelsea. Aaron Ramsey was in offside position. He steps as if he's going ahead of the ball, and then he walks away. And then Alexis Sanchez gets in behind and scores. And he's not interfered with play. The defender's kind of been watching the entire time, but initially it was flagged up. There was no VAR back then. It was 2017. But then they eventually deemed, he's not touched the ball, he's not interfered, he's simply existed in an offside position. What more could he really have done? Other than sprint at full pelt to get onside. So yeah, no, you're right. But then again, did Celtic not used to have a whole thing where Kyogo would sit offside and then he'd drop back in, and it was like a loophole to be tactical about it. See, that should be encouraged. Stuff like that should be encouraged. It's within the confines of the law. It's not real interference. But yeah, like I say, they pick and choose.
Yeah, and I think it always comes down to what everyone says a lot of the time, which is, was that clear and obvious? I don't know why VAR keep going with this clear and obvious line, because it seems to be the only thing they don't use when they come to these decisions. But moving on then, Ethan, I will stay with you and just on St Mirren. They ended a run of 3 straight losses with that draw last night. They go into the semi-final against Motherwell. How do you sort of see that one going?
An interesting one, very interesting one, because I think Motherwell perhaps play the most expansive and attractive style brand of football across the division. On the other hand, if I'm a betting boy, and I am, it's a serious problem. I'm putting money on St Mirren to win, because I just think St Mirren have that robustness about them to be pragmatic, to win, just to find ways to win. And Motherwell have seemed to have this issue where when they're in winning positions, they can fit them to draws. Now, they did win against Dundee United midweek, comfortable home game, comfortable 2-0 victory. But I think what you saw with St Mirren going toe-to-toe with who are on form, the best team in the country, and were deserved winners of a game that didn't win. Yeah, I'm backing St Mirren to win that game. But yeah, like I say, that'll probably, would I dare say, it could arguably be the better of the two of the semi-finals, given how the last Old Firm went, because the Celtic and Rangers players go into this mindset again of being too scared to lose, whereas Motherwell and St Mirren, for them, all they're thinking is, there's a cup final here, we've got to fucking have a go at this. These chances are so far and few in between. But yeah, actually, can I change my name as well? I could probably go as the Motherwell manager for this this as well with this costume.
There's a real follically challenged problem in Scotland, apparently. And as a Rangers fans, knowing that we have the worst of the bunch, apparently the highest percentage, and I'm one of them. So there you go. We're trying to speed up a little bit. So Alex, Motherwell, then they're obviously the other team in the semi-final. They beat Dundee United last night 2-0 after beating Livy 2-1 at the weekend. Back in form, fifth in the table. They've played good stuff all season. Probably the best football inside this season by quite a distance. And unlike Rangers and how Russell Martin, I think, thought he could play, Motherwell sort of do play that way, but they also create chances and score goals. So how do you sort of see that semi-final going?
Yeah, I mean, Motherwell needed to turn performances into results, and that's what they've managed to do because they've had the performances all season, and people have been saying that the football has been so expansive. It's been some of the best that they've ever seen at Fir Park, but at the same time, they were drawing game after game after game after game, and almost one loss puts you in this situation where you go, actually, hold on, what's going on here? We're not doing very well at all. So back-to-back wins and turning those performances into results is really, really, really important for them. They're another team, the only other team to take points off of Hearts. And again, they were unlucky in that game. They were 3-1 up and Hearts brought it back. So I don't know. Motherwell are a good side. I think what both of these teams will be thinking, and I think it makes it a little bit harder with the recent change at both Rangers and Celtic, but given the start to the season and the current form that both sides are in, whoever does make it to the final, either Motherwell or St Mirren, will be thinking that they've got a real chance at putting their name on that trophy.
Yeah, absolutely can't argue with that. So we won't go in depth on some teams because there's just not enough to speak about, really. Dundee United, 3-1 win over St Mirren at the weekend. Followed obviously last night with that 2-0 loss to Motherwell, as mentioned. Quite a weird stat with Dundee United because they're the second top goal scorers in the league, but they've also conceded, certainly in the top six, the most. But I think it's the third most goals they've conceded as well. So they seem to be scoring a lot, but they can't keep it out at the other end. Aberdeen, Ethan, we'll touch on them a little bit. So they lost obviously 2-1 to Hibs. They weren't very good in that at all, but they did then beat Killy 1-0 in the league last night. Stuart Armstrong scoring there. Thielen's still under massive pressure. They've got some mad director of football coming in at some point, providing he can get into the country without stealing any penguins. But they've had back-to-back away wins for the first time in a year. 3 wins in 4. Lazetic is sort of firing on, especially after that first clip we saw of him with the sort of reserves team just ballooning one over. Didn't even look like a football player. Now he looks dangerous every time he's on the pitch. Do you think there's sort of shoots of promise there for Aberdeen, or do you think it's maybe too far gone for Thielen?
Well, first of all, I'd probably steal a penguin too, so I'm completely on side for that. Yeah, he's really been in need of some positive results recently, and they got that first win against Dundee, and some Aberdeen fans maybe thought they could turn a corner on the basis of that, but it still seems to be a bit hot and cold. But at the end of the day, going away to Rugby Park, especially for Aberdeen, hadn't won there since 2020. That's a place where to get a win, you have to show a lot of real grit and desire. So to just get that over the line, I think, there's definitely signs of encouragement there. And as Alex pointed out to last season, Hearts and Hibs having these staggering starts and relegation battles at this point, maybe we'll see history repeat itself, because after all, Aberdeen done the reverse last season, didn't they? They started off so well, top the league, flying for the longest time. Then they just ended the season terribly. They've started the season terribly. Maybe it'll come full circle and they'll finish the season the way they looked to begin in the first place. Because they've invested well, Aberdeen. There's some very good players in that team. Heavy investment. They've got the left back, the German Ghanaian left back. They signed for about £500,000. Boy Carlson looks like a good find. Of course, Keskinen as well. The 2 Scandinavian wingers costing around about £800,000 a pop, I think. Like I say, Killy away is no easy ground to go to. So to get the win, it'll give them that spur on, because really Aberdeen should be a team that look at every other team in the division and should say, we've got a chance here. We should fancy ourselves against them. So maybe there's an argument to be made that there's a lot of confidence players, because it seems to be Aberdeen, they're either doing very, very well or they're doing really, really shite. The momentum seems to really be hardcore with them. So Jimmy Talleen, obviously, he's got the credit in the bank from winning the Scottish Cup last season. So I'm actually quite happy to see that Aberdeen are sticking with him. It's quite rare in football that the credit in the bank tends to stick. In Scotland, it seems to be a bit more reoccurring in recent times, especially with David Gray being an example. So yeah, I would probably expect Aberdeen to kick on a little bit now, but the performance level has to be there. It's not just results; the performances need to improve faster too, because that was the main thing. Was that it's like the slump they finished last campaign. They never got really shaken out of this season. So maybe now we'll begin to see that. Maybe now those settings will begin to gel in, and maybe now they'll find the right rhythm.
Can I just ask both of you, just before we move on that one, do you think Talleen is still in the job if they don't win the Scottish Cup?
No,
No,
I think he's been sacked by now.
I think there's, like you even said, it's credit in the bank, and it's. I think they've shown enough through his start and winning the cup that he's got something about him because they started so well, went toe to toe with Celtic for the first 10 games, whatever it was, and then B, he can actually back it up with the Scottish Cup. That's actual success. So it's no, there's no guarantees it's going to work out. I can see why they're sticking with him, but I can't see any manager really surviving the run of form they've been in, really. Moving on then, so Killy and Falkirk, much the same as we've praised John McGlynn to high heavens. Tough team to beat. They've only, I think, apart from Hearts and Celtic, who beat them 3-4. Excuse me. Apart from those games, I think they've not lost. They've obviously lost, but they've not lost a game by more than a goal. So they're pretty much in every single game they're playing at the moment. Kilmarnock, they're struggling a little bit. Still mid-table, but 3 losses in the league. Striak is out for 16 weeks now after that sort of routine scan flag something. So obviously all our best wishes go to him. But I think Kilmarnock are going to sort of struggle without him because he's a very good goalie.
Yes.
But I do want to touch on sort of 2 more things before we sort of end it for today. I'll go with Alex first because then I can bring Dundee back for Ethan. So Livingston, Alex, bottom of the league. Weird because when I was sort of looking into this pod, I did feel like Livingston were bottom. I felt like Martindale had done all right this season, and obviously they're not expected to do. He's there, so I've got to speak good about him. You expect him to do well because they always punch above their weight, and you sort of expect them to be around the bottom of the table. But I was just surprised to see the rock bottom. But how about this for a stat that I couldn't believe when I seen this? They've only lost by more than a goal twice, like Falkirk, but every other loss has been in stoppage time. So they lost the Hearts in the 92nd minute, Rangers in the 94th minute, Dundee in the 97th minute, and Motherwell in the 93rd minute. 4 league losses in stoppage time. I mean, can you see any way out for him, Alex, or do you think is it out of them in Dundee, or do you think they're pretty much gone already?
They'll be in the bottom 2 in my opinion, but I think Martindale knew that there was the challenge was to kind of keep them up if he possibly could. I think this time 2 seasons ago, or this time a season and a half ago, when they were looking to take the drop, and eventually they did. Martindale said, "I don't know if I'll be the right man to guide them back up," and he did it in 1 season. So they'll stick by him. I know they'll stick by him. And if anything, it would be if he leaves, it will be on his own choice, I think. But do they have enough to kind of get out of relegation? I don't think so. It's just if Dundee continue their form, then maybe Livy might be able to sneak above them. But I mean, don't they played each other, and like you said, Dundee won. I know it was late on, but you need to be picking up points in those kind of games, and maybe their luck will turn around. Maybe they'll stop conceding goals after the 90th minute. But yeah, it's a tough start to the season, and you start how you mean to go on.
Yes, and then even bringing it round with Dundee. I mean, talking of sort of late goals, you lost one at the weekend to Falkirk, losing 2-1 there. It's sort of tough at the moment. Three defeats after sort of a round. Sorry, not straight in the row, but that wonderful Celtic win. Then you've got sort of 3 defeats that are littered around that Celtic win. There's tough games coming up. I think it was Hearts away, Rangers home, Hibs away, St Mirren home, Celtic away. That's a tough run coming up. Where are you sort of sitting at the moment as a Dundee fan?
Yeah, it's funny. I meant to write it in my BBC article, but I forgot. We're the Robin Hood of the league at the moment. We're stealing points from the rich and gifting them out to the poor. Go to Ibrox, we get our first point in 24 years, beat Celtic for the first time at Dens Park in 37 years. It's like the games where we're the underdog status. We show up and we're up for it. We're up for it. We'll have a go. We get the results, worthy results as well. And then games where maybe expected to be a bit more on the front foot, expected more to kind of kick on, away to Pataudry against a fragile, struggling Aberdeen, at home to Dundee United that had their own fragilities. And in both those games in particular, we just completely lied down and took the so defeats. So where am I with it at the moment? The Falkirk game was very disappointing, but I felt it was a game of two halves, really. I felt Dundee kind of did do enough overall that they could, another day they get a result kind of thing. Because on one hand, the main aspects of the Falkirk performance specifically, the main talking point, sadly, is another VAR issue where Ethan Hamilton's, Kyle Wilson, kicks him. Now, you can listen back to my commentary. I didn't think it was a penalty at the time. I thought it was just a coming together of two bodies. And I'm sitting there saying, it shouldn't even have been stopped for free kick. It should have just been play on, just keep going. And then I watched it back and I thought, oh, actually, you know what? That's how's VAR missed that? That probably is a penalty. I listened to Andy Halliday on the Open Goal podcast say it's the biggest Stonewall penalty he's seen in his life. So I'm amazed, and even more amazed that the end result was a free kick to Falkirk, and Dundee got two bookings off that as well. Incredible. But the first half display, I said, we're very professional. Simon Murray could have scored twice in the opening minute, but he's had a very stop and start season, so he's obviously lacking a lot of match sharpness. He was obviously a key figure for Dundee last season. So it's one of those where, albeit the second half display wasn't good enough, and both goals for me were defensively were weak as piss. I still saw enough there where I thought, well, you know what? Like I said, another day, if Simon's a bit more sharp, another day, if we're not fucked over from VAR, another day, we go there and we get the result that we need. And I still expect Dundee to finish above both Livingston and Falkirk this season, despite losing away to Falkirk. I think it'll be a very different game when they come to Dens Park, when some of our players will have more time to gel. Because I can see there's a work in progress with Dundee. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, as some have suggested. I can see what they're trying to do. I can see a team that's trying to get a blend right of being both solid defensively. We're definitely more stable defensively as we were compared to last season, where we were good going forward but way too open at the back. We've managed to kind of patch the leak, but on the other hand, we're struggling to get that creativity and flair. At the moment, we seem to be very reliant on Cameron Congreve for a great game against Celtic. It's now, a one-man band. If he's not on it, then we've got no fire to let the cannon off in the first place. So yeah, I do think that it will come together. I don't think we'll be struggling as much as people would expect down the line. But certainly, there's a lot of work to do. As you said, they're very tough fixtures. But given our credentials this season, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually went to Tynecastle and got a result. We won our last game there, and I think relative to the rest of the league, I think we've maybe even got the best record at Ibrox compared to other teams in the Tynecastle compared to other teams in the division. Need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that. Obviously, maybe take Celtic and Rangers aside for that one. But yeah, so caught in two minds. I would still expect Hearts to put three past us, really, because they're absolutely high flying. They look tremendous. But again, we have to really wait. And again, it's the classic wait and see how it goes. It feels like with Dundee right now, it's a toss of a coin of which Dundee side's going to show up.
Yeah, wow, there you go, straight from your former DTV. Was it Dundee announcer now? Should I say?
Well, I'm still a DTV commentator. I commentate the Falkirk games, so I'll still do most of the away games. But yeah, for the home games, I'm the stadium announcer now. I've got promotion over the summer. So yeah, if you're at Dens Park as it is, and you're listening to goal scored by number 9, or getting really depressed when your team score and I'm kind of fizzing on the inside, I'm goal scored by number 9. Yeah, that's me. So
there you go. Not just a David Martindale impersonator. But as we begin to wrap this pod up, then, so I'll first off, I'm going to get your prediction. So instead of giving me results or anything like that, I'm just going to ask you what is the final fixture going to be? Who is going to be playing in the Scottish League Cup final? Ethan first. Who do you think?
St Mirren and Rangers.
Oh, wow. There we go. The two underdogs, maybe. Alex, what about yourself?
Oh man, it's hard. You never ever want to go against your own team, but I'm just really not confident. I'll try and be different. I'll go Motherwell v Rangers.
There we go. So we're destined to be depressed, me and Alex, after this weekend, after those two predictions. Can't wait for that. So first off, then the teaser we asked at the start of the podcast was there has been one Brazilian manager in Scottish football, and your other clue is that he's managed a team that is currently in the Scottish Premiership. Ethan, any guesses at who he managed? Don't need to tell me the name, just who he managed.
I'm going to go back Livingston.
Livingston. And Alex, what was your guess?
I was going to say Livingston. I've got Livingston and Dundee United written down. I could not think of anybody from anywhere.
You can say the same. You can say the same.
I'm just trying to think. Like Dundee United had mad manager. No, the other one I was thinking was Hearts. Did Hearts have one? But no, I'll go Livingston. Yeah, if we win together, we win together. If we lose together, we lose together.
Well, there you go. Bang on. Absolutely bang on. It was Marcio Maximo, and he managed for a very short spell in 2003. Actually left his job at the Cayman Islands, who'd offered him a 10-year contract, and he left and said no to go and manage Livingston for about 6 months. But there's your teaser. Marcio Maximo, well done if you said Livingston, and well done if you knew the name, because early 2000s is my niche, and I completely forgot about him if I'm honest. But I feel like Livingston, Dundee, those two around that time were absolute mental clubs. Like some of the things going on were crazy. So we're going to finish the pod up with a little game, and then I think we've got a little sort of Halloween outro for you, or a Halloween goodbye from our resident David Martindale. So I will let him get there. So our outro today is going to be starting 11. So I'm going to give the boys a match in Scottish football history. I'm going to keep it within the last 10 years. And they take turns naming me the starting 11 in those games. They can name anyone as long as he played for one of the sides in the game. If he didn't play, they're out, they lose. If he came on as a substitute, they get another go to go again. So your fixture, lads, is the 2021 Scottish Cup final. And it was St Johnstone 1, Hibs 0. Can you name me the starting 11s? So just one at a time. Alex, go first. Give me a name.
Sean Rooney.
Sean Rooney is correct. He played for St Johnstone that day. Ethan.
It's just the St Johnstone lineup. It's not both St
No,
Johnstone.
you can say both. You can say either.
Obviously both. Well, Xander Clark.
Xander Clark is indeed correct. Of course, it's correct. I've just realised I sort of need to write these down as we go, so I don't let you duplicate any. So, Alex, back to you.
Yes, I could be out already here. I'm gonna go. Oh, this is so difficult. I've really got no idea. But was Ali McCann still at St Johnstone? That's gonna have to be my guess.
Ali McCann is correct. Ali McCann did indeed play for St Johnstone. You named 3 St Johnstone guys so far. Ethan, back to you.
Liam Gordon, centre half.
Liam Gordon is absolutely bang on. I mean, I'm so impressed that you're just naming St Johnstone players here, by the way. This is incredible. Alex.
Yeah, you're screwing me over here a little bit. Oh, do you know what? I'm not going to go for him, but well, no, I don't want to say his name because then if he's right, but I'm going to go for Martin Boyle. Martin
Boyle did indeed play for Hibs that day, so you are also correct. Back to Ethan.
Glenn Middleton.
Glenn Middleton is an outrageous correct shout from Ethan. Back to Alex.
Oh no, that's horrible. I wasn't going to say him. I was going to go for. I might just still have to go for him because I can't think of anyone. But was Stevie May?
Stevie May. Stevie May was on the bench for St Johnstone.
Oh, okay. So I get another go.
And he didn't come on.
Over. Right.
However, as you went first, Ethan needs to name a starter to win.
Yeah, so I'm caught in two minds because I feel like I know who the Hibs goalie was, but if I want to win with a bit stylish here, and this was Stevie May the striker, I'm going to then say that the striker that started ahead of Stevie May, was it not the Israeli Guy Melamed?
Melamed was also on the bench that day,
Oh, but he came on, didn't he?
and he also did not come on.
Oh!
So we are going back. We're running it back, Alex. Let's go again.
Now I gotta think. Right, St. Johnstone strikers who played in that era that weren't them.
See, that's surprising.
I wouldn't have even like known.
I should give you a little, not a clue here, guys,
Oh,
but
okay.
got to remember that there were 3 subs, not 5 at this point.
True. I'm gonna go for. I've just been thinking about Baldies. Chris Kane.
Chris Kane is correct. He was the forward that day. Played the full match, I believe.
Oh, I know you know that. I've just remembered who the Hibs keeper was, so you definitely get it. Ah, I know why.
Here we go then.
The Hibs goalkeeper was Matt Macy, no?
The Hibs goalkeeper was indeed Matt Macy. There you go. So how many have you named so far? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've had 8 correct answers so far. Back to Alex.
Right, I'm gonna think at Hibs because there's more Hibs. The only way I got Boyle was I was thinking about the semi-final we had the season after when they beat us 3-1. So on that, I'll have to go for Mr. Do I Look Happy, Ryan Porteous.
Ryan Porteous, you'll also, he did start, and you'll be no surprise to hear that he got booked in that game as well. Ethan, back to you.
Right. This is getting sweaty.
You've done far better than I thought you two would. I thought this would be a really snappy one.
Yeah. See, I can remember a few details, but the thing is, I commentated St Johnstone that season. They beat Dundee in the Scottish Cup to get there. But I'm now doubting myself if I'm having a couple of overlaps. But would the left back for St Johnstone have been Scott Tanzer?
Scott Tanzer was on the bench.
Oh no.
And he did not come on. So Alex wins the start 11. The teams were...
Oh, hang
on, go on, Alex, here you. And go one more.
Was Josh Doig still at Hibs?
Josh Doig was at Hibs and he did start, yes.
There we go.
So the teams were Xander Clark in goal, Jason Kerr, Liam Gordon, Jamie McCart, Sean Rooney and Callum Booth were your wing-backs, Ali McCann and Craig Bryson in the middle with Glenn Middleton, David Wotherspoon and Chris Kane ahead of them. Your substitutes that did come on, James Brown, Murray Davidson and Michael O'Halloran, which I thought maybe someone would have said. And then the Hibs team, Matt Macy in goal, back four of Paul McGinn, Ryan Porteous, Paul Hanlon. How no one said Paul Hanlon, by the way. Josh Doig, left back, midfield, Martin Boyle, Alex Gogic, Joe Newell, and Jackson Irvine. Christian Doige partnered Kevin Nisbet up front. And the subs that came on were Lewis Stevenson, Jamie Murphy, and Melker Hauberg, if you can remember him. And that, of course, when St Johnstone won the trophy. So there, a little fun game. I'll have to give him a harder game next time because I didn't expect him to get so many. I thought that'd be like a 1 minute top thing, but plenty of tension. So that is us for another episode. We'll hopefully be back after the Scottish Cup or the Scottish League Cup to talk about what went on there. So all I've got to say really is thanks to Alex. Thanks to Ethan or David Martindale. And I'm going to let David Martindale take us out with a Halloween message.
Happy Halloween, folks.